I present to you the greatest hits to the Israeli economy. Over the course of the year-long genocide, I have observed these 5 or 6 coffin nails that I think have done the job to make Israel go the way of the South African apartheid regime. I'm not sure about the order, but you can tell me. Number one has got to be the downgrade of Israel's credit rating on the world markets. This is a headline from Haaretz. Israelis will be poorer under all scenarios. Israel is just 3 rungs above junk rating. Word is out on the street that Israel has not been and maybe cannot pay its debts on time or on their own without a lot of trouble in refinancing. I credit this move to the Norwegian Sovereign Pension Fund, which was ahead of the game, and they dumped Israeli bonds right in November 2023, setting off a chain reaction of people dumping Israeli bonds and trying to reclaim their money, and Israel couldn't pay it back without crazy refinancing. Number 2 is Israel's unaliving of a huge part of their workforce, which are Palestinians. After October 7th, Israel lost 100,000 Palestinian workers because it suspended their work license. And of course, Israel has been unaliving them. Now they're trying to replace them somehow with, say, Indian workers, because this labor shortage problem is costing them $828 million a month. So these are actually mostly construction workers. So a lot of construction sites have been put on hold, yet they're very heavily financed and in debt. And if they don't move along a certain schedule, they go bankrupt. And as you can imagine, they haven't been able to fill in these 100,000 vacancies in any good amount of time. So a lot of development projects have gone bankrupt. So we're talking up to $106 billion in bankruptcy in that sector. What's extra creepy is that even before October 7th, the Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, in May 2023, visited India and signed a deal with India to send 42,000 Indian workers to Israel to replace Palestinian workers. And back then, before October 7th, the trade unions were saying such a step will amount to complicity on India's part with Israel's ongoing genocidal war against Palestinians and will naturally have adverse implications for Indian workers in the entire region. So just creepy that the Israeli foreign minister was planning ahead, as if they knew something was going to happen to Palestinian workers. Anyway, just to say that the Indian trade unions are against it. And in fact, 10 Indian trade unions have gotten together representing 100 million Indian workers to say that they are against sending workers to Israel. So if you can imagine, it's not just the current construction projects that are unable to be finished. Let's say after this massacre of Palestinians, Israel still needs to rebuild because it has damage to its illegal settlement towns, and it can't even reconstruct those because there's no Palestinian workers, let alone it try to settle Gaza or the West Bank. There are just simply no workers willing to come work for the genocidal state of Israel. They're not going to be able to come back from this lack of low-paid workers. In the agricultural sector, they also lost 30 to 40,000 low-paid workers, largely whom were Palestinian and also people from Thailand. Food prices have also risen due to the higher processing costs without these low-paid workers. At one point, this farmer tried to bus in volunteer Israelis to roll up their sleeves, save their nation, and pluck vegetables before they spoiled. But of course, this can-do, feel-good busload venture petered out, and he lost half of his produce and all of his profits. That's what happens when you kill off your low-paid workers. Next has got to be the Houthis' choke point at the Red Sea that has blockaded all imports and exports in and out of Israel. This has led to the outright bankruptcy of one of Israel's 3 ports, the port of Eilat. The port city has been paralyzed for months on end, and the Houthis are 10 toes down with the Palestinians. They aren't letting up. They just need to tweet, and insurance rates skyrocket. And at this point, no major shipping company wants anything to do with going through the Red Sea. Guys, there's about 41 million Yemenis. They are all pro-Palestine, and they are not going to let up. So RIP Israel's Red Sea route, import and export business with Asia forever, or until Israel is defeated. Coming in at number 4 is the impression that the world now has of Israelis as almost Satan, according to Israelis themselves. Here we've got filmmakers, publishers, producers, artists, creators, and musicians all saying that they are unwanted internationally. Going forward, how are you going to ever measure what amount of money you could have made when people are just shunning you forever? That's what's happening to the Israelis. Israel's pride over its pager attacks against the Lebanese has eroded every last bit of trust left. What tech or digital venture in the world would ever want Israel either up or downstream in its supply chain after something like this? Israel has prided itself in terrorism, digital and technological terrorism. How is it going to come back from this? Israel has lost a lot of international trust by lying through their atrocity propaganda. A huge example, of course, is the 40 beheaded babies who didn't even have names or parents and were not listed in the memorial on October 7th. They are never named alongside the hostages. So Israel is just going down in the annals of history next to Joseph Goebbels as a manufacturer of public consent for war. Number 5 has got to be the self-trashing of Israel as a progressive liberal society, because even Israelis before October 7th have realized that it is a fascist state and have been quietly exodusing. Doctors have left, academics have left, tech workers have left. They've been incorporating in the United States instead because they don't want their tax money going towards funding fascist ideas. There is actually a threshold, that if a certain number of these middle to upper class workers leave, it will make the economy unviable. But what's funny is that this number hasn't been countable because even the bureaucrats who do the counting have left. Basically, out of its population of about 9 or 10 million people, it's been said that really only 400,000 workers are the most productive in the Israeli economy. And if even just 10% of those people leave, so that is 40,000 people, if 40,000 professionals leave, it makes the Israeli economy go into a critical downward spiral. Number 6 has got to be BDS. BDS has had immeasurable impact on crippling companies that have tried to come out as Zionists. Starbucks shares have fallen, McDonald's shares have fallen, Pizza Hut franchises have closed, Coke is closing down bottling plants, CEOs have been canned, the diamond industry in Israel has been cut by 48%. The biggest boycott against Israel is, of course, Israel itself. Its tourism industry, which is reportedly worth $5 billion, has tanked. Nobody wants to give this genocidal, freakish, rogue nation any money. And there have been ripple effects, such as illegal settlers can't rent out their Airbnbs anymore. Commercial real estate has cratered because all these tourism spots have had to close. Even residential real estate has cratered because those who've been bankrupt by the lack of tourism can't afford their houses anymore. And of course, no one is buying residential property to make into Airbnbs because they're not viable anymore. I'd say related to BDS is the protests that happen weekly in cities all over the world have really helped the movement against Israel and in support of Palestinians grow. Here we meet community, we get catharsis, and we learn about BDS. And we feel less alone. Not to mention, it's a welcoming place for anti-Zionist Jews. As you can probably tell, I had a hard time ranking any of these effects, but it's a network effect that is happening with all of these converging at the same time, and it will be the demise of the Israeli economy and project. Tell me in the comments what you think.